Hello, in this video I'm going to replace the headlamp switch. There could be various reasons why a switch needs to be replaced. It could be that the switch is broken, your headlights aren't working correctly, or other similar issues. On this car, one of the headlights would not turn on. One of the headlights would occasionally turn off. I noticed that the switch was somewhat loose and would wiggle, and I would have to play with the switch so that both of the headlights would turn on and work properly. Noticing that the switch was messed up, it was obvious that the switch was causing the lights to not work properly, and so there was no doubt that the switch needed to be replaced. In order to remove the headlight switch, I'm going to remove the steering column's case. On this car model, the case is a two-piece part and has a few screws holding it together. It has 4 screws to be exact. There is 1 screw on the far left and 1 screw on the far right of the casing, and 2 screws located towards the middle of the casing. When breaking apart the 2 pieces, don't forget to remove the cover surrounding the ignition switch. I used a Phillips screwdriver to remove all 4 screws holding the steering column case cover together. Once you remove all the screws, the case cover should be able to come apart. Again, this cover is a 2-piece part, and when the screws are removed, the cover will not come apart so easily. There is a tiny bit of effort needed to break the 2 pieces apart. I removed the headlight switch without removing the lower panel located underneath the steering column case. By not removing the lower panel, the steering column cover cannot fully be removed. Because of not removing the steering column cover fully, I can see that this might be a little more difficult to remove the switch. If it's easier, just remove the panel along with the steering cover fully so that there is more than enough space to remove the light switch. But again, it is possible to remove the light switch without removing the panel. This is the part that I bought. I bought this part on eBay. It came in a box that was well padded, it was secure and safe, in my opinion. I bought parts from eBay, I would say many times. I had some pretty good experiences getting parts from eBay. I also had some bad experiences as well. There have been parts where parts just didn't work. Now that we have the part, it's ready to be installed. Installing it is straightforward. Just do the reverse of how the part was removed. When installing the part, what I like to do is I like to install the connectors, then screw in the 2 screws later. Installing the connectors first, I feel gives me more room for my hand to install the connectors, which makes it easier. Installing the light switch is pretty easy, but during the installation process, at times it could be somewhat of a pain. So playing around with the unit a little bit until it clicks into place is sometimes what's required to get the unit in. The same goes for a lot of other part installations on a car. Once the headlamp switch is in place and everything is lined up, I used my hand to put the screws into the screw holes. I hand tighten the screws just enough so that the screws can hold by themselves. I didn't screw down the screws by hand so much. It was just enough so that I didn't have to use my other hand because space is limited to here. Once the screws are on, I could then use a Phillips screwdriver to tighten the rest of the screw. I also connected the bigger connector to the unit only after I screwed and tightened down the switch. It's a tight squeeze, but I just felt it was easier to do it this way. There's no particular order in doing this part. I connected the small connector first, then screwed in the screws and fastened the screws, then connected the bigger connector. I could have installed the unit in another order. For example, I could have installed the bigger connector and small connector, then screw down the unit. I just did it in the order I did it in because I just felt it was easier to do it that way. So this is the unit installed with the screws tightened and connectors connected. Now it's time to install the steering column's case cover. Just a reminder, if you remove the case cover completely, you will have to reinstall the bottom instrument panel. Back again to the case cover. The case cover is a two-piece part and will have a bottom half and an upper half. The bottom half and upper half will need to snap back together. A little bit of effort may be needed to put back the case covers and may need to be played around with. You'll know when the two parts are correctly put back together because you will hear a snap and there should be no gaps in between the two parts. Once the two pieces of the column cover are back together, the 4 screws can now be screwed down. The 4 screws should easily line up with the screw holes of the case cover, especially if the covers are on correctly. Once the part is verified to be working and everything is working, the old part can be tossed out. Thank you everyone so much for watching.